John Scott here with Jonathan Acosta. Bills a gut-wrenching end to their season, 33-30 in overtime here against the Denver Broncos in the divisional round. And let's just start at the very top with the controversial ending here. We'll start with the Brandon Cooks play. I thought it was a catch. The more replays I saw, I thought it was a catch. You think it's a catch. Sean McDermott thinks it's a catch. Brandon Cooks thinks it's a catch. Everyone seems to think it's a catch except for the referees. Did the Bills get screwed?
I mean, it's hard not to feel that way, right? Because you watch that play and everything, all of the football that you've ever watched in your life tells you that when you're watching that, you see Brandon Cooks catch the ball, has possession when he goes down to the ground, by contact. The ball then, after that, after he's down by what should be by contact, is when it gets wrestled away from him. But that doesn't seem like it should be a continuation of the play if he's down by contact again, right? So if that's ruled a catch, the Bills are in field goal territory.
They win the game.
Field goal range. They win the game. We're talking about them going to the AFC Championship game. And so I think we'll talk about this more, about the emotions felt in the locker room, but I feel like that's something that contributes to this, because in some of these other playoff losses, there hasn't really been a point where you're like, man, if the Bills get this, they win the game. Mm-hmm. The Bills had that, and they feel like it was legitimately taken away from them between that and the defensive pass interference calls down here on that final drive in overtime. Trey White livid with the call that went against him. We saw him slam his helmet down and stuff like that. So not just Sean McDermott, but it really feels like this Bills team truly aggrieved by what happened. I mean, we've even seen Deion Dawkins and Reed Ferguson take to social media with their comments. So, and that's not something that you normally see out of this Bills team, the way they sort of handle losses with grace. Not saying that they're not doing that, but obviously they feel like they have thoughts that need to be heard by people.
McDermott's issue is certainly with the actual call itself, but he also takes incredible issue with the entire process and the way it was handled. He was very strong immediately after the game, and even in some of these extended comments later on before the team took their flight back to Buffalo, saying it felt rushed. It felt like there should have been more time. He called a timeout because he felt things were just, this is an interception. This is what we say. The eye in the sky says so we move forward. And that's why he called the timeout. He's like, I didn't want to, but this needed to have a little more attention brought to it. And McDermott feels adamant, and I agree with him. Why did this not go to an actual replay? And why then are we get a pool report from the referees explaining some of these calls, but we need to hear from New York as to the replay process, because replay has done a lot of good things, but it seems like that whole process failed in this very critical position.
Well, and especially because, again, it's in overtime, the coaches can't challenge, right? So everything is handled by automated review, basically, right? Everything's automatically reviewed or whatever. But the purpose of that feels like it should be, okay, then there has to be a barrier in the sense that, like, if coaches can't decide for themselves what is important enough to challenge, then a play like that has to be something where the refs are like, hey, like, we have to take it upon ourselves to make sure we got this right. Take a second look. And that was a huge call in this game.
Even if it's the optics of it.
Yes.
Even if nothing changes in terms of the outcome of the play, you could at least need to show we did the full due diligence and extended all of our options to make sure that in our minds it was right.
Because there's one thing, and we see this sometimes, where people think it's a bad call, and in the end it ends up being the right call based on how the rules are written, and then people's issue is really with the way the rules are written, and it might be a bad rule, which could have been the case. Maybe if we get these extended reviews and we hear a rules analyst on TV explain, hey, here's what we're watching, here's all the rules, this is why it's X, Y, Z, here's why it's actually an interception according to the letter of the law. I think people can live with that, and then there can be the discussion of, well, does the rule need to change? But that we don't have that right now, because, again, Sean McDermott had to take the time out just to be able to have a conversation with the referees. And so you saw the strong post-game comments. He said, that's all I'm going to say on that. Took a beat and then said, I did it because I'm standing up for Buffalo, damn it. Though this did not go down the way it should have gone down. And Sean McDermott is like a pretty well-tempered guy. He doesn't lose his cool, especially in post-game media sessions. So for him to be that fiery, and with the context that he's on the competition committee, I think speaks volumes about what we saw go down on this field.
You mentioned the two defensive pass interference calls, one on Taron Johnson, one on Tre'davious White. Both of them after the game strongly saying, hey, it was the wrong call. There's other people saying, including both Taron and Tre'davious, they were letting both sides play all throughout the game. There was one right in this end zone late in the game. Brandon Cooks, Riley Moss, you very easily could have called pass interference there. Spencer Brown kind of jokingly saying, I was holding guys left and right throughout the game, and they were letting us kind of just let the actual players dictate it. And then for whatever reason, at the most critical moments of this game, they decide to pull the flags out and really insert themselves into the outcome of this football game. We're going to get to the Bills' self-inflicted wounds and why they were in this position at all to begin with, but it is a sequence of events that I think Bills fans, I usually say you cannot go down this path and you have to look at yourself and not the officials, but I'm actually going to say in this instance, hey, you're going to be thinking about these calls, I mean, maybe, who knows, similar to 13 seconds forever.
Yeah, I mean, how do you not? Again, this is a game that you can easily say the Bills, despite all of their self-inflicted mistakes, should have won. They were in position to win that game, and then it's that sequence of three very, very questionable calls that go down. And again, just because the penalty's so different from the way the game was called throughout the course of the game. I mean, how many pass interference calls did we see over the course of the game? None. Much less on one drive, much less within the time frame of 3 plays. And now, especially you take into consideration the fact now, that last one at least, Bo Nix was playing with the broken ankle. That doesn't get called, and I mean, adrenaline, I'm sure, does its thing, right? But you think maybe the Bills have a chance to get a stop and force, instead of a 20-something yard field goal, a 50-yard field goal that puts a lot more pressure on the Broncos kicker to make that kick, right? So it's not just the outcome of that one play on the penalties or on the review, but sort of the other things, the butterfly effect that all of those things have. That I think I agree with you. It's going to be hard for people not to think about this sequence for a long time.
The most emotional locker room I've ever seen, covering this team since 2014. Guys crying, all of this. And Josh Allen took it the hardest, but he also, and they didn't lose because of Josh Allen, but for one of the very few times we can say, I mean, he played some of the worst football we've seen. He had 4 turnovers, and he did, in a large way, put the Bills in a very bad spot, which is something that you just rarely ever say.
I think you got both sides of the Josh Allen experience in this one, because when he was not giving the ball to the Broncos defense, I thought he was excellent. Made some fantastic throws. The touchdown throw to Kincaid, right? Awesome throw. Putting his body on the line. First down after first down with the tush pushes. Extending plays. Unfortunately, a big reason he won MVP last year was his ability to take care of the football. And as we've seen this year for this specific Bills team, the turnover differential is so important. It seems like every time they lost a game, we would talk about, they lost a turnover battle. That's really what it came down to. They lost a turnover battle. That ended up being the difference in the game. A turnover differential of 5-1, that's extraordinarily hard to overcome. Even if Josh Allen was playing like prime Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, or whatever, the other 58, 59 minutes of the game, right? So you understand then with that, the emotion that comes with him coming to the podium, tears in his eyes, and him taking blame for this loss, because, yeah, the turnovers directly led to points. The one at the end of the first half was mind-bogglingly bad.
And it was 3 points gifted, and if they have those 3 points, they win the game in regulation.
And the one Josh Allen turnover from James Cook, who your 2 best players gifted the Broncos the ball 5 times. That's so hard to overcome, especially with this Bills roster that lacks in premier talent outside of those 2 players.
Then Larry Ogunjobi, offsides. It mitigates a fumble recovery by the Bills. There just were some, again, self-inflicted wounds. It was a very carbon copy recipe for many of the losses that we saw throughout the season. Miami's one where Josh and James Cook were the 2 that had all of the turnovers in that game as well. So now we move forward, and that's really what happens. Do you anticipate any big changes, and do you think there should be?
I don't anticipate any big changes. I would say that if I was Terry Pegula, and you're the final decision maker on all of this, right? And you sit down and truly think about the state of your franchise. You've had now all of these runs with the same core, right? And what's that popular saying? The definition of insanity is continuing to do the same thing and expecting different results. How many times can you run it back with Brandon Beane as your GM, Sean McDermott your head coach, Josh Allen your quarterback, that same core intact, and expect something different? So, okay, what do you change? For me, the change would have to come from the general manager. I think I've reached the point where if I was Terry Pegula, not saying that he's going to do this, but if I was in his shoes, I would feel comfortable parting ways with Brandon Beane, because I think the biggest issue with this Bills team this year was roster construction. I actually think Sean McDermott did a fantastic job coaching the team for the players that were available to him on this roster. And, I mean, we look at this, you can check the box score. Josh Allen, when targeting his running backs and tight ends, excellent. The wide receivers, though, outside of Khalil Shakir, not so great. And that was something that wasn't just an issue today, wasn't just an issue the last month, wasn't just an issue really during the season. It's something that we could have foreseen being an issue for this Bills team dating back to the beginning of the offseason, which is why Brandon Beane got so upset on that radio call. And now we're here talking about the end of the season and the optics of that calling to the show on WGR, and just the arrogance and the bravado with which those comments were made. And now you're looking back, and that still ended up being one of the biggest issues with this Bills team. Defensively, it's another playoff loss where there's no pass rush. And he's invested so many draft picks into that defensive line, invested signings into that defensive line. And every postseason defeat, it's still the same issue of them not being able to get to the quarterback. We were talking about this on our way out here onto the field. I don't think it takes this extraordinary GM to come and look at this team and say, I need to upgrade wide receiver and I need to upgrade the defensive line. I think where the GM makes his money is actually making the signings and making the draft picks that actually end up changing them for the better. And Brandon Beane just has not been able to do that. So I would feel comfortable giving a shot to someone else. You have Josh Allen. Josh Allen covers up so many of the deficiencies with this roster, with this team, that I don't think Brandon Beane gets a lot of credit for drafting Josh Allen. He 100% does. But his job doesn't end there. His job is to continue to construct this roster at the other 52 positions. And while he's hit on some good players like James Cook, who's ended up being an All-Pro and stuff like that, he's had his fair share of whiffs too. Your second-round pick from last year was almost a first-round pick in Keon Coleman, 33rd overall. What'd you get out of him? He made one nice play for a touchdown, but in a game where your receiver core is depleted, you would like to be able to think that your second-round pick wide receiver is like, hey, we're down these guys, but here's an alpha or at least a good number 2 where we can depend on him. He ended up with what? Was that his only catch of the game?
I think so,
The touchdown? Failure right there. Again, you go out and you sign Joey Bosa, you invest in TJ Sanders, and you invest in Deion Walker on the defensive line in the draft, and Landon Jackson. Unfortunately for Landon Jackson, he ends up getting hurt, but he wasn't contributing much at all this season. Deion Walker looks like a steal in the 4th-round pick. But TJ Sanders, another second-round pick, didn't do much for you out here. And Joey Bosa also didn't do much for you out here. So I think it's just, for all of the hits that he's had, I think it's just become too many misses to where the Bills always feel like when they come into the playoffs, at least since I've been here, this is now the 3rd postseason that I've been here, when they lose, one of the things you're talking about is their roster is just not as talented as the team that they're going up against. Their roster is not as talented as this Broncos team. Who does that ultimately fall on? It falls on the general manager, where that's his main job.
I don't think, first off, I don't necessarily disagree with anything that you said. I don't really know how you could disagree with a lot of what you said, because it was factually based on what we saw here this season. I don't think anything happens with Brandon or Sean. I don't think there's any shakeups here. When it comes to Brandon, I do think, and I have been here longer, I do think he has shown the ability, when things don't end how they want them to identify the issues and then attack it. And at certain points, like in 2020, we need to upgrade a number 1 receiver because we have this young quarterback who's budding and needs someone to throw it to. He aggressively went out and got Stephon Diggs. After 13 seconds, he's like, we got to upgrade the pass rush. He aggressively goes out and gets Von Miller. Now, Von Miller didn't work. The knee injury was kind of just something you can't foresee, certainly. Mm-hmm. And it ultimately didn't work out. So I think he has earned the benefit of the doubt to at least get this offseason to hit better in the draft, to let these draft picks get another year and marinate, and maybe they blossom, get healthy, and be aggressive and go address in a meaningful way the two positions that are the most glaring in need of big swings, and that is wide receiver and that is pass rusher. And if he does that, I think then you let the results kind of play out for themselves. And I think it also, as much as I think Sean McDermott had a very good year, it'd be 10 years basically with this regime after you go through next year. And then I think depending upon how all of that unfolds, that's when you have to have the super serious conversations about the direction with either of them.
Because we have to talk about the thing that people don't want to talk about, but it's a reality. Josh Allen is not getting any younger. He's going to quickly be 30 years old. How many more years left do you have of his prime? And do you want to continue to run out there every year of Josh Allen's prime with Brandon Beane as the GM and Sean McDermott as the head coach as the years continue to stack of not winning a Super Bowl? So if someone wants to come here and tell me that they think it's Sean McDermott who has to go and Brandon Beane should stay as the general manager, I'm willing to listen to that argument. I disagree with it because I think Sean McDermott did a fantastic coaching job this year. But again, I think it's just more about like you can't continue to do the same thing and expect different results. So you have to shake up something. And if the biggest issue with the team is roster construction, then I think you shake up the one guy who is most in charge of that for this team.
It is a more challenging part of the cycle here that the Bills are in with Josh Allen because they're paying their superstar MVP level quarterback the type of money that you have to. So that's where your margin for error on the Josh Palmer, Curtis Samuel, Joey Bosa type signings is so much smaller because you don't have the money, you don't have the resources, so you are in the pressure position of more of a necessity of landing and finding your talent in that bargain shopping, and then that also amplifies the need that first, second, third round draft picks. They have to be good and they have to be impactful in some capacity early because you're having to play them because you can't pay everyone. And I think that is part of it. And I think there is another wrinkle that in the where has Brandon Beane had missteps, I think you could say some of his extensions have been hasty. Dawson Knox, Tyler Bass. We don't know about Terrell Bernard. We don't know about some of these other guys. And now he has to decide, is he going to pick up the fifth-year option for Dalton Kincaid? What does he do with some of these offensive linemen? It's another year.
Is Matt Milano actually gone after this year, right?
Is tre'davious White? Are you going to believe in Maxwell Hairston? I mean, this is where they're all going to go. There's always going to be these issues here. So I don't think anything happens. You don't. I think you can. I don't disagree with having the conversations, though, which in the past, whether it was Sean or Brandon, I wasn't willing to go there. I'm willing to have the dialogue, and I know we will over the coming months. I don't think anything's going to happen, but I do think their seat is as hot going into 2026 as it ever has been with this team.
I will say for Brandon Beane, something that I think he can do that will win him some brownie points with the fan base is when he talks to us at locker cleanouts, is to address the comments that he made about the wide receiver and basically admit he was wrong. Because I think, I don't know what's the word that I'm looking for here, but the way his comments came off, it almost felt like he went into this season thinking, hey, I need these guys that I put into this receiver group, I need them to prove me right. I need to sort of prove myself right to everyone else that's doubting me that I built this receiver room the right way. And he didn't, and that's why he continued to make all these dart throws during the season of a McCole Hardman and a Braden Cooks, Gabe Davis getting called up from the practice squad, right? Just like objectively now with the season now over, we can look back on it and be like, there's no chance the Bills were winning a Super Bowl or should have won a Super Bowl with the wide receiver depth chart that looked like that. And it's not just like that he has to go and sign one or two receivers. I think it's a position group that needs a total makeover, like an HGTV style, like makeover, remodeling, all of it. You keep Khalil Shakir, you're going to bring in a lot of new blood into that receiver group. I think Keon Coleman, like if he's not part of this receiver group next year, like who's batting an eye, right? So a lot of wholesale changes need to be made there. And back to the point I was making earlier where we were talking about draft picks and then you brought up Josh Palmer and Curtis Samuel. Those are the two most significant free agents he's added at that position each of the last 2 years. And I think we can safely say At least for Curtis Samuel, that signing has been a bust. Josh Palmer's only been here year one, but as of right now, that's the direction that one is trending in also.
They'll probably move on from Samuel. I don't think you can from Josh Palmer, so you're probably looking at Shakira's back. Palmer will be back. I'm not opposed to a low-level amount of money for Brandon Cooks. I liked what you saw, but Brandon Cooks cannot be your 1 or 2 guy on the outside. He needs to be more like 4 or 5 on that depth chart, and you need to go get a proven commodity that can anchor that group on the outside, and then I would infuse at least 1 or maybe 2 draft picks there. As you mentioned, Sean McDermott, Brandon Beane are expected to speak at some point this coming week. Their final thoughts on the season. They usually go about an hour each, and we certainly know there's plenty to talk about, and we'll have that for you as the week rolls along. And that'll do it here in Denver with Jonathan Acosta. I'm John Scott for Channel 2 Sports.